Welcome to The Nest Show, the podcast that brings you insights into the crypto market, trading and investment experiences, and what we're looking forward to as we navigate the space together. Today, we're joined by special guest Etiënne van Cruz. Etiënne is a former stock trader who specialized in the biologics and pharmaceutical space. He pivoted into crypto and became an angel investor and is a founding partner of the Token Research Group that has advised crypto DeFi leaders like OneChain. He's an early investor in Bitcoin and is a vocal supporter of transitioning traditional financial products to the blockchain with inclusive cryptocurrency regulations. We are also joined today by my special co-host Dennis, whom most of you will know better as Aperture. Today's episode continues to look into the evolving coronavirus's impact on the world as we know it, and we pull out our crystal balls to gauge how it changes the trajectory of the crypto space as we know it. Our guests have a lot to share with listeners today, and you will not want to miss this episode of The Nest Show. Thank you for listening, and enjoy the ride. What The Nest Show is: this is a podcast brought to you by the Birb Nest community, an independent crypto and forex-centered trading community built to sharpen each other in capturing opportunities in the markets while protecting capital along the way. What this is not: trading advice. We are not financial advisors, and you should not regard any information here or in the Nest Club as financial advice. You should always consult a licensed financial advisor before making any financial decisions. All right, guys, welcome to the Nest Show. Today we are joined by Etiënne. Etiënne is a former stock trader, STO and ICO investor, early investor in Bitcoin, and global extraordinaire. Etiënne, how are you doing today, man?
Considering the circumstances, couldn't be too bad. I'm healthy. My family is healthy, so we're good. I'm good.
Well, I'm very happy to hear it, and happy to hear that you guys are healthy and whole. Today, we are also joined by Dennis, or Aperture, co-hosting with me today. Dennis, thank you so much for being here, man.
Good evening. Good to be here again.
Etiënne, what is your appraisal on world events and your day-to-day, man? How are you affected?
It's challenging. Looking at the current markets, countries, how they operate, how they go about tackling this pandemic, the added effects, the unknown effects with the economy, health, structures in healthcare, insurance, you name it, security. Before the podcast, you already hinted towards that, is how will society be after Corona? Thinking about personal freedoms, how countries will tighten certain measures to be prepared for maybe COVID-20 or COVID-21 or whatever. Because these SARS viruses, they've been upgrading in the last few years. Right? We've seen earlier ones, and I'm not too convinced this is the last one. Looking at that and being a father of 2 young girls, it's definitely something that would keep you awake at night. I must admit though, and I was talking about it this afternoon with a good friend of mine, it's definitely exciting times. So there's a lot of fear, but part of me is just, okay, the dynamics of the global economy are shifting. We've seen trillions being printed in Washington. We've seen China downplaying their infection numbers. You see dynamic plates moving, and that excites me in a strange way, right? Maybe I've been watching too much Quentin Tarantino movies, I would say. But it's exciting, but at the same time, like I said, it's uncertainty. The uncertainty, I'm not sure we've ever seen this before. Just 3 months ago, I was at the World Economic Forum in Davos and in Switzerland. And for sure, a pandemic was not on nobody's agenda, or Corona was none of the talking points. Nobody was talking about Corona. This is how fast this one caught up with us. Definitely interesting time. And I think for us as investors in the cryptocurrency space, we'd like to see it as an opportunity for Bitcoin to claim its place on a global stage. Like, we're here, this is what we offer the planet. But I'm not too sure about that yet. So we'll get into that, I believe, later in the podcast.
Yeah, to follow up on your last point there with Bitcoin, I personally think that we will see a small bounce, call it a dead cat bounce in equities markets, and then there's going to be continued pain, just in my opinion. And I think that Bitcoin will be affected by that as well as other crypto markets. I think it will be sheltered a little bit more than some of the other markets because most of the flight to cash to cover other positions has already taken place by some of the other institutional players. But still in uncertain times, people fly to cash. And I think that we're going to see a lot more pain in equities markets, and that will inevitably affect crypto, in my opinion. And the real test will be what happens after that. That will truly be Bitcoin's time to shine. Not so much the near term, but more so 6 months from now and 12 months from now.
100%. I agree with that take, because the whole story is now, okay, what happens after? So now if you say after, you kind of coined a certain time period on it, right? So is it 6 months, a year? What is it? How's the fair? Most, even crypto traders, I would say most of them, our lives are still dictated by fiat. When we talk about Bitcoin and its monetary value, we talk of USD, which is something I must admit I still struggle with. The price for Bitcoin is still back to it. If the dollar loses value, especially now you're seeing different forces. Look at the whole oil trade with Russia, Saudi Arabia, and whatnot, all these actors. If Bitcoin is going to get its value from USD, it's back to USD, right? When we tweet about it, we talk about it on social media and whatnot, we talk about its USD value. If its USD value is in danger, we would need to go back to those first two sentences in the white paper. It's a peer-to-peer coin. That's the use of it. Right? Obviously, the last couple of years, especially the last 2 years, the narrative kind of changed towards it's a store of value, right? So now my fund manager friends are talking to the police like, hey, diverse at least 5% of your risk capital, put it into Bitcoin, see what happens. Put it into cryptocurrency, see what happens. Whether it's Bitcoin, Cosmos, Kava, and whatever. But again, if it's a USD value, and obviously think of the crypto companies that are having to pay their employees or their B2B relationships in fiat. What happens there on that front? So I think it's too short, in my opinion, to just say if fiat goes or we come into a severe depression, Bitcoin is just going to pop up and take away the problems this world is having, our monetary system, our global monetary system are having currently. I think that jump is, to me, too quick to think. We need to put a little bit more thought into that. If it's a store of value, what happens? How do we go about doing business and transacting value on a day-to-day basis? Obviously, do we go back to that peer-to-peer aspect of it? Can the network handle that? Have we solved our governance issues? Do we fork every year like we see in the BSV or BCH, whatever? Did we take care of our problems already? We need to have those questions answered, or at least an attempt to get to another popular phrase, a proper consensus of what does Bitcoin or the whole cryptocurrency as a whole has to offer the planet, people that, like you said, are going to be in so much pain. Can Bitcoin offer that ease or some salvation for everybody in pain? That question to me is not answered convincingly yet.
Yeah, I think I agree. The change will take some time. There are some problems with fiat money, and people are talking about hyperinflation and debt rising. But the shift to something like cryptocurrencies will take steps, because you're not going to replace a whole system with debt, with funding, with interest, savings, by just switching over to a blockchain. Because there is a lot of IT infrastructure, like societal structures around it that we expect to work, and we need to switch to a different system on the blockchain. And I think it will take years, maybe decennia, before that will be fully completed. And I think because we're still early, how we envision it now will be totally different in the future.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So, which brings me to another point is I had a conversation with a former investment banker at a conference in Paris last year, and he brought up a great point where he said, dude, I see what's happening. You guys been knocking on the doors, knocking on the walls. Keep doing just that. Don't go screaming on top of the building tops like you found it. Go back to a popular analogy would be, go back to the start of the internet. They didn't start the internet to have Amazon. They didn't envision Amazon in 20 years, where Amazon is right now, right? I think if you go back to, okay, what is the value proposition for Bitcoin? If you go back to that and you would compare it to the majority of this planet, how would Bitcoin be an added value? I think that question, ease of use, day to day, could Bitcoin take away tiny piece of that? I would be happy already, man. To replace the total financial system, nah, man. I'm not the one for those hyperbolics.
Absolutely. And I do think that, we're already seeing a good deal of transitioning away even from cash. China and other countries signaling that cash could possibly be a form of passing contagion of corona and maybe other future contagions. So there's already some propaganda spreading about basically the demonization of cash and moving away from cash to more electronic forms of transfer from a QR code or from another killer app, be it PayPal and Venmo transfers. I think it does provide a nice tandem or a nice complement to traditional fiat transfers. Obviously, I think that the people who are in crypto right now, anybody who's saying that Bitcoin is going to supplant of Federal Reserve currencies is the predominant form of transfer, I think is kidding themselves at best. And we don't need that. We do need a multi-trillion-dollar market cap for what I think the true value of Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies to be realized, at least in the next 5 to 10 year period. But that's not that far away when you count in the parabolic curve that we're starting to see with inflation. That's kind of the brave new world that we're entering into. In your intro, you had a great point that I was really happy to hear, where you have a lot of excitement and see a lot of opportunity in this space. I love to hear that. And I think that that's so important to filter out all the fear mongering and all the propaganda and say, yes, pragmatically speaking, there are going to be some very difficult times ahead for many people, and various forms of exchange are going to become less liquid. What we can do, each one of us, is to be gardeners of our own mind, to take note of whether or not we're feeding into the cycle of fear or whether or not we're cutting through the noise to exact more opportunity and to shore up our own futures. I was very happy to hear you on that wavelength.
So you get up in the morning and you would read all your websites, you go to whatever news outlet you favor, you trust, and you take in all your corona updates or whatever bloodbath is on Wall Street, on the equities markets. After you're done with that and you've done your basics for the day, what's next? For some strange reason, through human history, we've always found a way to get through adversity, face the challenges, and become stronger as a species. I force myself, like, for the majority of my day, I want to read and be interested in material that would help me build. Because those that prepared during crisis, they inevitably would come out stronger down the line, right? So I force myself to be in that energy, where I think of, okay, what's next? And I hope your listeners, your community would take up that similar approach. Like, hey, we're still here. We're gonna lose loved ones left and right, but we're still here. We need to prepare and continue this celebration of life.
Yeah, fear contracts and opportunity and hope expands. After this initial jolt of, self-isolating and social distancing, whatever you want to call it, after that necessary contraction, we are going to need to find an organic way to harness expansion into opportunities and to assisting our communities and raising each other up. And it starts with each and every one of us as individuals. Dennis, I'd love to bring you in here, man. For one, in the pre-show, Etiënne said that up until a couple of weeks ago, he didn't even realize that you were actively trading in crypto. How did you guys meet?
I think we met through a course on how to teach at the university. Yes. And we, our lecturer was one of the best professors I ever had. Yeah. And I think we connected because we have a similar mindset. I'm also, even in these bad circumstances, I'm looking at it from a positive view. There's much more downside. I think it will get worse, but there will be also a maximum opportunity. Yeah, we have to stay inside. I'm crypto trader, so nothing much has changed, and but that gives some opportunity to reflect on yourself, reflect on your connections you have with people. How do you think these will evolve? People are reaching out to friends and family they haven't connected in a while, to check up if they're still healthy or doing okay. People are trying to get some exercise and being creative. You see all these kinds of videos on YouTube that brings people together on a global level. And also, on a personal level, I am looking more into trading, more into programming, because I have some more free time left. So I think with that view, we still connect, and we're still having conversations about trading. And even if we fail, I think that's also a part of it. We both realize we can fail, but then we still had fun. We enjoyed ourselves. We had some passion for finding stuff out and experimenting with new stuff. But for every 10 experiments, and I think this is maybe a good bridge for going towards angel investing and ICOs. For like every 10 opportunities you try to take, most of them fail. But you learn something from it. And the ones that don't fail will bring the most experience, maybe the most income, and that's why I enjoy it. It's just playing the probabilities, because if you try enough, eventually you will succeed.
Coming back on your points there, Dennis, with the angel investment and Etienne's experience as an STO and ICO investor, Etienne, I wanted to draw out a little bit more of your experience in the ICO space and that kind of wild, wild west, and how that's evolved and kind of how it's brought you to where you are today.
Oh, man. The thing is that me and a group of guys started looking into projects, and it was called N-Shares back then. If I were to show you the N-Shares website right now, in this day and age, you'll be like, this is a scam or this is total nonsense. But for some strange reason, it was the standard of the day. We started investing, and obviously we got the wave up, took some profit off the table as any investor in the market. We could have taken out more, but we're happy. And like I said, coming from equities markets, I had that approach of digging into startups. So digging into startups or being a short trader and value investing on the financial markets, it's that you get this habit of digging into stuff, looking at numbers. Okay, we don't have numbers. Looking at the team. I have a call with the team. I would say 90% of investments we did, we had a face-to-face meeting with the founders. Face-to-face. Like, we're never gonna send money if we didn't have a meeting in person. I don't care if they're in China, Korea, San Francisco, or whatnot. So it was a whole lot of traveling, obviously, in 2017 and the greater parts of 2018, talking to this project. So now that hype died down because that no money, that influx obviously reached its peak in December 17. And for some strange reason, all of us, we were under the impression the price is going up because blockchain, because this is value. It represents the value of the blockchain, this code, this beautiful code on GitHub, which was weird in a bubble. So obviously when the market corrected, and remember in April 18, the market had a small bounce, as you correctly described, the dead cat bouncing. And one of my partners, also an equities trader, he was like, dude, I don't trust this. I don't trust this. Go look at the chart. April 18, the market went back up and everybody got exposed thinking we're going back to all-time highs. And that's the moment we were like, okay, I think we need to pull out a lot. My father-in-law was screaming that day in, day out, because obviously he had seen the .com boom, right? Where every website was half a billion's worth, right? It's like, dude, get out. He was screaming at him, and obviously me being a believer. I was like, nah, and especially Ethereum is going to overtake Bitcoin. That was the narrative of the day. So 18, markets died down. And obviously, December 18, when Bitcoin went from 6K, I believe, to 3,500, everybody was like, okay, we're going to zero, right? What now? So when the markets recovered to 45, that's when we decided to get our feet wet. Like, okay, what's happening here? But obviously, we wish we got it done more. But the whole influx of new money also dried up the influx of new projects and new credible, nice projects. There were still a few out there, looking at Kava out of San Francisco, Ferrum out of New York. There was still value there. Grin, great open source project. You had still value out there. So, but it was obviously harder to get into. So that was the nature of it. But it had also taught us new ways of fundraising on a global scale, right? I went to a meetup in Amsterdam with a couple of guys that work in the banking industry. They said, we're looking at crypto as how to do fundraising for our small businesses, right? These small businesses come in, they ask for a 50K loan, and we on the risk management team know a 50K loan is going to do jack shit for such a startup. What is 50K, right? It's 50K on marketing alone, right? So they're like, okay, how can we structure this to do these fundraising on a global scale? What type of regulations do you need to get this in place and up and running? So that was definitely something that crypto opened our eyes, that you could raise money from any investor in Korea for your startup in South Africa, right? Imagine that. It was global, cross borders, cross regulations. One of the topics along with that is the internet already started this wave, but the thing that amazes me the most about this crypto and underlying blockchain industry is the challenges it poses to governments and nation states. Because regulations for whom? Right? It's even harder for a government to maintain and control the citizens under its ruling, right? But now you come up with the internet. People can do commerce across borders. So now we're introducing autonomous networks. I think that is going to add another layer or 10 layers of complexity. Like, okay, whose rule do you follow? Right? Whose rules and regulations apply right now? Right? And I think that's even a bigger complex question to just go, like, okay, regulation, like, dude, whom? Even within the EU, the Dutch government might have a different approach to the Belgian government, right? And now we want to have autonomous networks. I think that's going to set off a whole new wave of complexities that we still need to think of, and obviously have an open conversation, because it affects our both life, even whether you're into crypto or outside of crypto, or you don't want to play with it, you don't want to mess with it. It still has an effect in our daily lives, especially because I still believe bullish on it. It's going to grow. It keeps growing. But how it's going to interact and play along with current systems, it's definitely going to be something we need to think of for short and long term.
I'm very interested in how you think governments will do these regulations, because every time a new technology comes, like the internet, the government is lagging with regulations or laws about it.
Mm-hmm.
How do you think they will catch up?
Oh, that's a good one. Actually, I had a conversation. I was in the process of writing a book about it, actually. I had a conversation with a law professor, and she's advising the Dutch government in laws and regulations. For instance, go back 20 years ago, email wasn't considered evidence in a court of law, right? They were like, okay, what is this? And she advised the government, like, hey, dude, if you and I have an agreement on email, it's technically on paper. For that insight to us or a millennial generation, be like, duh. But I guess if you're in the government, you're like, nah, take your time, let's think about it. So obviously what you're saying there, technology, or let's put it this way, GitHub moves faster than the law, right? Always. So coming back to blockchain and autonomous networks, how they will catch up, I guess the first option they have is they could close fiat gateways. If your currency is under threat from a cryptocurrency, or you want to keep track of money laundering or whatever, I guess you would close every fiat gateway, right? Because that's for long. And I had another conversation with a government agent talking about, dude, we have a task force that solely focus on crypto exchanges. The hair on my neck is just standing up, because I'm like, dude, what? And he goes on to say, we do analysis on crypto exchanges, right? And they look at the security, they look at KYC, they look at money coming in. They mapped out all the blockchains that are connected to various exchanges. While you and I are going around, crypto is the future, crypto is this, they're watching us. So obviously the first option they have is close that gateway as a knee-jerk reaction of how do we maintain this animal is growing in size and it's a threat to us. It's a threat to our power structures, right? By the way, to quote the gentleman, 9 out of 10 crypto exchanges are not safe. But that's another podcast. Coming from that angle, because what a government essentially want, they want to have an overview and control of the flow of money. And if you want to go dark with your financials, even if you're not into illicit actions or activities, they want to have an insight in how your money flows. And go back to your earlier point, Ben, where cash is under threat, cash is disappearing. Digital money is the best tracking tool. So while we go, well, we have crypto, the blockchain, wallet to wallet, peer to peer, I'm like, dude, relax for a minute. It's perfect to track. Chain analysis could show you anything. Put it all on the table, spill it out on the table, like, hey, you made these transactions. So cash, governments, flow of money, that's ultimately the control of a country. To answer your question of how they would respond, if crypto grows in size, they will have to react, like control it. And the best opportunities for them is either you shut down exchanges, shut down bank accounts, shut down the fiat gateways. And I hope we don't get to that point. So we obviously need to have that conversation. Actually, also, I was at a panel meeting in Davos where the CEO of Ripple said, actually, to the crowd at that meetup, they want to work with authorities. He actually said, don't quote me on this, like, if you think the US government is going to give away their control of monetary systems, financial systems, and give away the dollar, you're crazy. They have F-16s and tanks. I was like, okay, thanks for that. I needed that reminder that it's not child's play, right? It's not the Boy Scouts we're talking about here. The response is obviously, the first knee-jerk reaction I see is the power play. And obviously next to that, I would say the blockchain in itself as a technology could offer obviously supply chain or whatever, great opportunities for businesses, individuals, whatnot, obviously, but that's been documented in what way blockchain is a added value to the economy and businesses and our business processes. But the first one, a currency, the main topic in how we view Bitcoin, is it a currency, whether it's VSV, whether it's BNB, whether it's Tether, for instance, right? Our good friend Tether, USDT. If we grow in size, governments will respond. And it could be a kiss on the cheek, or they'll cut our heads off.
I think that you hit it on the head with chain analysis, that basically they'll use it to track funds and tax them like they would any other income. At the end of the day, power is power. And we aren't going to circumvent that with a quote unquote decentralized network. We'll have a little bit of a leveling of the playing field by way of personal wallets or ledgers that can be moved on someone's person without having to lug around, say, gold bars or having your personal bank account frozen. That is one of the undeniable value propositions that Bitcoin and that cryptocurrency offers. At the end of the day, there is the undeniable relationship between fiat on-ramps and off-ramps that will be tracked and traced at one point or another. You can just count on it. The most disruptive aspect actually comes outside of the cryptocurrency world altogether, and that's quantitative easing and escalating inflation. Just looking at Bitcoin in a vacuum, a deflationary asset that's easily transferable, decentralized, yada, yada, against an escalating inflationary asset or currency, I think that's the main disruptor that I'm seeing unfold now is loosening monetary policy, drifting more and more towards hyperinflation and destabilizing even further third world countries and emerging markets.
I've seen a few, I followed a few people on whether it's YouTube, you listen to these podcasts, because obviously it's interesting times, and obviously we have people at home. We have so much spare time. We think about this stuff, right? Well, what is the place for Bitcoin? What is the case for Bitcoin in a world where the U.S. government just printed $6 trillion? And actually, one of the directors at the Fed said in an interview, "Well, we press a button and there's money." I'm like, wow. Right? To hear him just say that out loud, it's just a button on a computer. I'm like, wow. Right? So now, what I would add is Bitcoin offers a beautiful option. The simple question would be then, if you're an asset manager or whatever, do you want to be fully exposed to this 6 trillion injection, this hyperinflation? Or do you want to park some of your money into this new asset, right? And it has a particular use value we can transact. By the way, if you look at BSV, they're already building projects on top of BSV. Obviously, the one whose name I dare not say, but they're actually building projects and startups on BSV. And my approach is have an open mind. I look at what's happening, and there is actually stuff happening. So just simply by having larger blocks. But Bitcoin offers, again, an option. I guess if we're talking about freedom and you have people trapped in just one monetary system with all their value, all your assets, your family belongings, your family security, and you're in the euro or you're under the dollar, or look at what happened in Japan in the 80s. The option is nice to have. It's a wonderful thing to have. Like, hey, dude, put it into Bitcoin, put 10 Bitcoin on a wallet and don't look at it. Put it in a wallet and forget about it, right? Safely store it, obviously, get help where needed, but make sure you have that. Obviously, I would offer my top 8 coins I would put on a wallet and forget about it, right? But I would say the option for Bitcoin is the case for Bitcoin is exactly that. And that excites me. And the fact that it triggered a new generation that wants to think about currency exchange of value, and it's growing. And I'm actually in the process, as we're talking about building stuff, I'm actually in the process of a startup with my best buddy, and we're going to teach children how to code, right, in elementary school. I guess one of those kids will think about, hey, can we program money? That's one of the questions we're going to have on the course. Can we program money? What is money? Because obviously you want the 8-year-olds, 12-year-olds, 15-year-olds to think about these subjects. Because they're going to shape tomorrow when you and I are obviously going to be on the beach of Copacabana doing whatever, right?
Yes, sir.
The generation of the kids, I'm not sure whatever label we're going to plaster on them, like it's Generation XYC or whatever, but they have to think about these topics, like what is money to you? Is it programmable? How do you exchange value across borders, across nations? How do we deal with middlemen, etc., etc., etc. And we wanna have that conversations with young ones, and also I think kids growing up today, they might not need a resume in the future, but your employer might ask you, show me your GitHub, right? What can you do?
Before we let you go, I would love to cue our listeners in on something that we spoke about right before the episode started. And that was a survey that you released to 30 of your friends and followers. And the question posed was, if you had to hold an asset in crypto for 3 years without touching it, what would it be? What's the short list of some of those answers?
It was actually 8. Yeah, the thing is, in these times, okay, what are people thinking about, right? So I have friends, I'm in a few different Telegram groups or Discord groups, and I send copy-pasted a message to 30 guys, kind of like a sentiment, like survey analysis, like, hey guys, if you had $1 million right now, free, and you had to put it in maximum 8 digital assets, and you put it on a ledger or whatever store, whatever wallet, and you couldn't touch it for 3 years, what would it be? First answer I got, dude, 8 is too much, right? 8 is too much. I couldn't name 5, right? It's too much. It's too much risk, too much diversification. Okay, dude, whatever suits you. So you're getting stuff like, obviously, 40% Bitcoin, 50% Bitcoin, Ethereum. Top of the list, the answers I've got, Ethereum, Bitcoin, BNB, Tezos, Cosmos, Polkadot, what else? BOT, Basic Attention Token. Some of those bigger infrastructure. I see nice
Chainlink.
Chainlink, yeah, for sure. Everybody that responded to the survey had Chainlink in their on the list, and which shows you the community they've managed to capture.
I wanted to give you the opportunity to summarize or leave our listeners with any closing thoughts. Dennis, why don't we start with you, man? What would you like to leave our listeners thinking on?
Well, it's weird times, and with the market going up and down, especially Bitcoin, you have to see the bigger picture. And there is often a narrative that Bitcoin is a hedge. And sometimes there's the narrative that it's a risk asset. And at the moment, it's behaving as a risk asset. We see it going down. It's correlated with the SP 500. But with all the money printing going on, and if you find that magic computer button, please send it to me. But people will understand more about inflation and the quantitative easing part, and I think they will look for other options. The funny thing, before the SP 500 dropped, I heard multiple of my friends looking for a way to invest in the stock market, and that's typically something they do at the top of a stock market. Retail is going into these investments.
Buy high, sell low.
Buy high, sell low. And I think they will look for another opportunity, because why they did this is because their interest rate in the bank was very low. If they understand their money is going to be less worth in a couple of years, and even less worth with hyperinflation, they will seek for other opportunities like Bitcoin. Coming back to how the space will evolve, I want to, not sure if it's quoting, but Hegel, a scientific philosopher, uses the words thesis, antithesis, synthesis. And what we're seeing is like a thesis, a statement against the financial system. There is an antithesis, and that's the financial system. And it's never one of the two. They will somehow converge into a single option, and that will take years. And that's where we will have the synthesis. We probably take the best, or try to take the best of both worlds, and evolve in the financial space.
That's a beautiful point, man. I appreciate you sharing that with us. What about you, Etiënne? What would you like to leave our listeners with?
First, I would say, man, whatever the circumstances, touching on our earlier parts of the podcast, of the conversation, is remain the area of building and ideas. Get together, talk about it, build, have ideas, discuss ideas, shoot them down, but stay in the area of ideas. Next is, I guess, crypto offered the whole generation the opportunity as far as trading goes and investing to consider money management and the way the way you go about your finances. I guess you guys are doing a great job with your community on that. Dennis told me all about it, so congrats. And lastly, I would say there's an article on the Financial Times by Israeli writer Yuval Harari. You guys heard of that book, *Sapiens*? Wonderful book where you try to plot the whole history of mankind. He wrote an article on the Financial Times of where that would force us. The central theme of the article is how is the world going to be after Corona? And the way we're giving away personal liberties, just being under fear, is staggering. We need to think about that stuff. So it's a great conversation to have with friends, family, loved ones. How is the world going to be? So not just Corona as far as privacy, governments, power, whatever, but it would fall in line with what's the place for Bitcoin in all of this? What's the place for digital assets, cryptocurrencies, and all of that? I think it's a great conversation starter, and you could go on for days. Set up webinars. Would be definitely love to join. I think we need, and we have to, just like in the old Greece, if we're talking about philosophers and Hegel. I get what those guys would do is come together and have those conversations, right? Talk about these difficult topics and find the best arguments, work your way out there. I think thinking as an exercise, as we spend so much time on social media and whatnot, spend some time and get together and discuss topics, like pose arguments and learn. I would say that was my closing remarks.
Right on, man. And thank you so much for sharing that. Remain in light, harness your mind, think on the things that you want to cultivate more of, because you will inevitably go in that direction.
Awesome. Dennis, Ben, thank you so much, and catch you guys on the flip side.
Right on. Thank you so much for being here. And Dennis, you as well, man. Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thank you all for being on the show.
Cheers, guys. That's the Nest Show. Thanks so much for joining us. All right, folks, that's about it for today's episode of The Nest Show, and I want to thank all of our listeners for joining us today. We invite you to connect with our guest on Twitter, where Etiënne can be reached at HETTALENTCTC. Aperture is at ape_RTURE, and I am at Benjamin T1717. If you've appreciated the depth and breadth of what you've heard with us today, subscribe to our podcast and find our landing page at thebirbnest.com. We have a vibrant Discord community which acts as our central hub of operations, and we welcome you to join us at thebirbnest.com/Discord. We also offer an extensive free bulletin on emerging crypto market trends, exclusive undervalued gem reports, and in-depth expert technical and fundamental analysis at thebirbnest.com/bulletin. We always appreciate engagement from our community, which of course means liking the video and subscribing to our page, where we insist on bringing you the highest quality content available. Also, we're happy to incorporate tips and topics from our listeners and encourage you to email us at thenestshow@thebirbnest.com. This podcast is brought to you by the Birb Nest. Thank you, and trade on.